Here's the honest answer. No, you don't always need a buyer's agent. But if you're buying here in St. Louis and you're going without one or you're going with the wrong one, that's what can actually cost you tens of thousands of dollars. And you probably won't know it until it's too late. So let me explain how buyer representation works, what it costs, and honestly, if it's even worth it. In Missouri, a buyer's agent owes you what is called a fiduciary duty. That means to you, not the deal, not the commission, but to you. Not to get you to the closing table as fast as possible. Specifically, that means loyalty to your interest, not their own. Confidentiality, what you say to your agent stays with you. It shouldn't go anywhere else. And disclosure, if they know a material fact, they're supposed to tell you before you ever write an offer, or if they discover it while you're under contract, they're supposed to tell you immediately, not let you find out on your own. At least that's what's supposed to happen. What most buyers get, unfortunately, is an agent that says, hey, this is a nice kitchen, or here's a nice floor plan, hands you a pen, and expects you to work with them after one showing. Those aren't the same thing. After the NAR settlement, the rules changed. In 2024, buyers now need written representation just to walk in the door. I want you to understand what that means before you sign anything. In St. Louis, the majority of sellers are still covering the buyer agent fees. Now, what's different is that this has to be explicitly drawn out and agreed upon between both the seller and the buyer within the contract. That way, there's no misunderstanding about who's paying the commission and how much the agent is being paid. But you are signing a contract and it outlines how the agent is going to get paid, when they're going to get paid, and how long that contract is going to exist. And the challenge here is sometimes that creates a conflict of interest. So before you sign that contract, read it and ask the agent questions. What if this happens? What if I find a for sale by owner on my own? And if the agent gets annoyed, that'll give you a really good understanding are you working with a fiduciary? Are you working with a salesperson? Because that's what you should be asking before you sign this buyer representation agreement. I've been doing this for 13 years, hundreds of transactions, and I'm going to show you exactly what real representation looks like. Before we ever walk into the house, I've already done the research and I understand what the value is of the property. And now we need to walk through to verify and confirm the condition, because the pictures, I promise you, they don't tell you everything. And then once we get inside, I'm not enamored by the countertops or the floor plan or the layout. Of course, I'm considering them in terms of condition and value, but the things that I'm looking for, and what I always tell buyers, is that it's your job to fall in love with the house. It's my job to make sure you're not falling in love with a disaster. So that means I have to look at the foundation. Is the roof leaking? Are the window seals popped? Is there a Federal Pacific panel downstairs in the basement? Is there moisture intrusion? Can the grading be affecting the basement? And that's why we have a moisture issue. I'm looking at a ton of different things. I get it. I'm not a licensed inspector. I'm not a licensed roofer, but I've looked at hundreds of inspection reports. So before we ever walk in the door, I have a good idea of what I should expect from this type of house and in this type of price range. That means while you're looking at the house, you can figure out whether or not it's a good fit for your family, or if you want to grow a family there, or if it's even a good floor plan for your daily life. If it's close enough, or, does the noise from the highway, is that too loud? You can focus on those things, and I'm walking through and looking for things that are going to cost you money. When it's time to write an offer, I'm not just filling in blanks. I've worked up markets and I've worked down markets. When I first got into the business in 2013, it was a buyer's market. And over 2020 through now, it's been a seller's market. And so we're not just filling in blanks. We're going to actually come up with a strategy, especially if it's a home that's been on the market and it's the first weekend and we have to compete against multiple offers. I'm going to show you how to put yourself in the best position to be the top one or two offers that the seller actually has in their hand. And of course, fingers crossed, we go under contract, then we're going to get into the inspection. And before it ever comes back, I know what deal breakers are, things that you should walk away, things that you should negotiate, or things that maybe it makes more sense to ask for a credit and actually do the work yourself. I wish it were magic, but that's the experience over 13 years have taught me that every deal is different and every transaction has to be approached differently because we're working with people and there's 2 people or 4 or 6 on each side of the deal. Here's the part that nobody really wants to say out loud is that that's not the experience that buyers are getting. That's not really the fault of buyer's agents because if you look at the math, somewhere between 50 and 60% of the agents here in St. Louis have been licensed since 2020. It's a market anomaly after the pandemic where the expectation was you would close fast with no inspections or limited inspections and you would offer over ask. And it's difficult to translate that into a normal market. And that's really what we're seeing now. Is inventory low? Yes, but it's starting to balance out to where buyers have opportunities and sellers are still making money. But a lot of times they're going to have to negotiate those inspections. So when you ask them, is this a good deal? Well, it might be. When you ask me if it's a good deal, I'm going to direct you right to the comparable sales over the last 90 days. And then we're going to look at the last year and we're going to see how do properties in this area, just like it, perform over the last year. And you're going to know exactly what the house is worth and if you should offer more because it's listed too low to drive buyers into the house, if it's overpriced, and is that an option for you to have leverage, then to ask for credits and repairs. You'll be able to tell all of this before you ever make an offer. The quick version of the NAR settlement, because you're going to hear a lot of noise about this. What changed is that the buyer's agency agreement is no longer built into the MLS listing. They can't advertise how much they're going to pay a buyer's agent. That's no longer negotiated between the seller and the listing agent. That's something that's decided when the offer is presented to them. What didn't change is that sellers can still cover the buyer agency agreement. So what does it mean for you? It means that that document that you're signing now is more important than it ever was before 2024. So do you need a buyer's agent in 2026? Short answer, yes, but not because you can't figure it out. I'm certain you can figure it out. The reality is that sellers have professionals working for their interests on their side of the transaction, and they're still willing to pay for a buyer agency commission. So there's really no reason not to, but it's more important than ever that you interview at least 2 to 3 agents. What you don't need is just any agent. You need an agent that knows how to navigate the market. And that's why I put together stlhomejourney.com so that you can go and interview me. And if you don't want to work with me, that's totally okay, but you can take everything from STL Home Journey and apply it to either the interviews or working with an agent that you're already working with to see how an agent should be presenting your offer, walking through the property, negotiating your inspections, preparing you for closing. I'm George Kindler with 13 years of experience, hundreds of transactions, and I have no Zillow referral fee behind my commission. If you're thinking about buying here in St. Louis, don't hesitate to give me a call or shoot me a text because buyer education is one of the most important things to me. Anybody that I've ever worked with, that's kind of their number one complaint is that I give a ton of information. I want to make sure that you're fully educated on the decision that you're making, whether you're working with me or not. Thank you for watching the video. If you have any questions, leave them down in the comments, like and subscribe for more videos like this.